The air in the grand chamber felt cold despite the hundreds of beings that filled the circular space. Ambassador William Carter stood perfectly still at the speaking platform, his blue eyes fixed on the 7 high counselors seated on their elevated platform. They looked down at him, literally and figuratively, as they had done to human representatives for over 200 years. Carter was tired of looking up. The Council has considered Earth's request to establish mining operations in the Epsilon Tauri system, said High Counselor Zrix, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. We have determined that such operations would disturb potential evolutionary paths on the 3rd moon. Request denied. Carter felt heat rise in his neck but kept his expression neutral. This was the 3rd denial this year. Epsilon Tauri had no intelligent life, not even microbes. The Council knew this. This was another excuse, another delay, another reminder of humanity's place. May I ask when the Council will approve any human expansion? Carter asked, his voice echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. In the last 5 years, every species represented here has been granted new territories. Every species except humans. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew what Carter said was true. High Counselor Zrix waved a long, thin hand. Humanity remains on probationary status. Your species is young and has shown aggressive tendencies. The Council must be careful. 200 years of probation, Carter said, no longer hiding the edge in his voice. 200 years of following your rules. We've contributed technology, resources, and lives to Council projects. Our scientists have solved problems that had stumped the older races for generations. Yet we remain second-class citizens. Ambassador Carter, warned Zrix, this is not the proper forum for— This is exactly the proper forum, Carter interrupted, causing gasps from several delegates. Interrupting a high counselor was considered deeply disrespectful. Carter no longer cared. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from dozens of worlds. Many quickly looked away. A few held his gaze, their expressions showing a mix of sympathy and unease. For 2 centuries, humanity has tried to be a good partner, Carter continued. We've compromised on borders, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. We've allowed Council observers on our worlds. We've shared our art, our science, our very DNA. And in return, we are still treated as children who can't be trusted. Carter reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal disc, his Council medallion, the symbol of Earth's membership. I came here today authorized to deliver a message from the United Governments of Earth and all human colonies, he said, his voice now calm and steady. As of this moment, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates stood, shouted, some in anger, others in disbelief. Carter placed his medallion on the platform with a small click that somehow cut through the chaos. Behind him, the entire human delegation, 30 men and women representing Earth and its colonies, stood in unison. They all removed their medallions and placed them on their seats. Ambassador, you cannot, began High Counselor Zrix, but Carter cut him off again. We can and we are. Earth's treaties with the Council are hereby dissolved. Human territories are now independent space. We will establish our own laws, our own trade agreements, and our own future. Carter stepped away from the platform. Admiral Susan Blackwood waited at the entrance of the chamber, her uniform crisp and her expression unreadable. The human delegation formed a line behind Carter as they walked toward the exit. This is a mistake, called out the Dravity ambassador, a former ally. Without Council protection, there are species who will see this as an opportunity to settle old scores. Carter paused and turned. We are aware of the risks, Ambassador. We are also prepared for them. As they reached the doorway, Admiral Blackwood touched her wrist communicator. All ships, this is Admiral Blackwood. Operation Independence is now active. Repeat, Operation Independence is active. Across Council space, human ships changed course. Merchant vessels broke from their trade routes. Research stations began shutdown procedures. Military vessels moved to form protective cordons around human worlds. Outside the council building, the human delegation boarded their shuttle. Carter took a seat by the window, watching the gleaming towers of the council capitol grow smaller as they ascended. "Was it everything you hoped?" asked Blackwood, taking the seat across from him. Carter shook his head. "I hoped they would listen. I hoped they would offer some compromise." 200 years, Susan, and they still see us as dangerous children. "Their loss," said Blackwood. She handed him a tablet. "The first reports are coming in. All human ships are responding to the order. We'll have our people clear of council, space within 48 hours. Carter took the tablet and scanned the information. Everything was proceeding according to plan, a plan that had been years in the making, created in the hope it would never be needed. "What about Project Pathfinder?" he asked quietly. Blackwood lowered her voice. "Director Frank Miller reports all systems are ready. Once our ships are clear, they'll initiate the first sequence." Carter looked out the window at the stars. Humanity was about to change the rules of interstellar travel, and the Council had no idea what was coming. "We gave them every chance," he said, more to himself than to Blackwood. The shuttle docked with the human flagship Liberty. Captain Richard Bell greeted them at the airlock. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Ambassador. Admiral." He saluted sharply. "All human diplomatic staff are accounted for. We're the last ship to depart." "Then let's not overstay our welcome," said Blackwood. "Captain, take us home." As the Liberty moved away from the Council capital, its engines glowed blue against the darkness. In the observation lounge, Carter watched as the massive ring structure of the Council station grew smaller. 200 years of trying to belong, of proving humanity's worth, ended today. The Council would soon discover what they had lost, and what humanity had been hiding. "They'll come after us," said Maria Johnson, Earth's chief scientist, joining Carter at the window. "Once they realize what we've built, they'll either try to take it or destroy it." Carter nodded. "That's why we waited until it was ready. By the time they organize a response, it will be too late." Across human space, on worlds and stations far from the Council's watchful eyes, massive structures began to power up. Technology, the Council had deemed impossible, or too dangerous to pursue, was about to change the galaxy forever. Humanity wasn't just leaving the Council. They were leaving the Council behind. 3 months passed after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council. At first, the Council tried to act as if nothing significant had happened. They announced that humans were merely taking a temporary break from Council activities. Many species believed this explanation. After all, how could humans survive without Council trade networks and protection? But as weeks turned into months, concern grew. Human ships no longer appeared at trading posts. Human colonies stopped responding to communication attempts. The borders of human space were now guarded by sleek warships that warned away any approaching. Vessels, Patricia Morrison and Alan Davis, senior analysts for the Council Security Division, studied the latest reports from the border in their small office. Pictures taken by long-range scanners showed unusual activity around every human world. "Look at this," Morrison said, pointing to an image of Earth's orbit. "These structures weren't there 6 weeks ago." Davis leaned closer. The image showed massive skeletal frameworks being built in orbit. They were too large to be space stations or shipyards. "What are they building?" he wondered aloud. "Whatever it is, they're building the same structures around all their colonies," Morrison replied, cycling through more images. "And they're working, fast." An urgent message flashed on their screens calling all senior staff to an emergency meeting. When they arrived at the Council's secure meeting room, they found it already filled with representatives from the major Council species. The Dravidi ambassador, a tall being with silver skin that reflected the room's lights, stood at the front. Unlike most Council members, the Dravidi had maintained somewhat friendly relations with humans even after the withdrawal. "Thank you for coming quickly," the ambassador said. "We have received disturbing intelligence that I believe you all need to see." The lights dimmed and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed one of the strange orbital structures around a human colony, but now it was active. A swirling blue energy field had formed in its center. "This footage was captured by one of our deep space probes yesterday," the ambassador explained. "What you are seeing should be impossible. General Kevin Hayes of Council Defense scoffed loudly. Are you suggesting they've built artificial wormholes? Our best physicists say that's centuries beyond current technology. They're best physicists, corrected Morrison. Everyone turned to look at her. She straightened in her seat. We always underestimated human ingenuity, especially when they feel cornered. Analyst Morrison is correct, the Dravidi ambassador said. My sources indicate humans have been developing this technology in secret for decades. The Council's restrictions only forced them to be more creative. The room erupted in argument. Some officials demanded immediate military action to seize the technology. Others insisted on caution, pointing out that attacking humans now would only prove they were right to leave. The debate ended abruptly when an aide rushed into the room. Counselors, forgive the interruption, the aide said, breathing hard. A human vessel has just appeared in orbit around our planet. It wasn't detected by any of our sensors until it was already there. The Council capital had the strongest defenses in known space. Nothing should have been able to approach undetected. The main screen switched to a live feed from orbit. A human diplomatic vessel hung against the stars, sleek and small compared to the Council's massive defense platforms that now surrounded it. They're broadcasting a message, the aide said. The face of a woman appeared on screen. She wore a simple blue uniform with no rank or decoration. Greetings from Earth and the United Human Worlds, she said. My name is Ellen White, Special Envoy of the Human Diplomatic Corps. We request permission to send a small team to discuss new border arrangements and trade possibilities between our peoples. The room fell silent. The humans had just demonstrated technology that made the Council's defenses useless, yet they were asking permission to land. How did they get here? General Hayes demanded. Our detection grid should have... I think they're showing us exactly why that no longer matters, said Davis quietly. The Council granted permission for the human envoy to land, if only to learn more about what they were facing. White and 3 other humans arrived in a small shuttle at the Council's landing pad. They carried no weapons and wore no armor, only their simple blue uniforms. Morrison and Davis were assigned to the welcome team. As they walked with the humans toward the meeting chambers, Morrison could not contain her curiosity. Your ship, she said to White. It used a wormhole to get here, didn't it? White smiled. Yes. We call it the pathway system. The first network is now operational. Network? Davis asked. There's more than one? There will be, White replied. By next year, we'll have connected all human worlds and key points in unclaimed space. Travel that once took months will now take minutes. Morrison tried to hide her shock. The strategic and economic advantages this gave humans were enormous. The Council races relied on conventional faster-than-light drives that still required weeks or months for long journeys. Is that why you left? Davis asked. So, you could activate this technology without Council interference? White's expression grew serious. Partly. The Council would have either banned the technology or taken it for themselves while keeping humans restricted. We needed to be free to use our own inventions. The meeting with the Council lasted 6 hours. When it ended, no agreements had been signed. The human envoys returned to their ship and departed as mysteriously as they had arrived. Morrison stayed late in her office that night, reviewing everything she knew about human history and psychology. One fact kept standing out. Humans had always been at their most creative, their most determined when facing challenges or restrictions. The Council had spent 2 centuries restricting humans, believing it made the galaxy safer. Instead, it had pressure-cooked human innovation until it exploded in a technological revolution. We created this situation, she said to Davis as he prepared to leave. By treating them as dangerous children, we forced them to grow up away from our supervision. Davis nodded slowly. And now, they no longer need our permission to go anywhere. Or do anything. As if to prove his point, reports came in throughout the night of human ships appearing near various Council worlds. They never stayed long, just appeared, scanned the area, and vanished again. They were mapping the galaxy in a way no single species had ever done before. The Council could only watch as humans began their independent expansion into the stars, free from the rules that had held them back for so long. The balance of power had shifted and everyone knew it. The galaxy was beginning to tremble. 1 year passed since humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council. The galaxy's economy struggled to adjust to their absence. Human worlds had never been the largest producers of raw materials, but they had been the innovation center of the galaxy. Without human technological advances and their unique approach to problem-solving, progress across Council space slowed dramatically. Ships that once took a few months to receive maintenance now waited in orbit for half a year. Medical equipment broke down with no one skilled enough to fix it. The small luxuries that made life easier became harder to find. Meanwhile, human territory expanded at an alarming rate. Their wormhole network allowed them to establish colonies in previously inaccessible regions. Systems deemed uninhabitable by Council standards flourished under human adaptation techniques. The Council chamber, once a place of order and control, now frequently erupted in shouting matches. Today was no different. "We cannot tolerate these actions any longer," the Zilarian ambassador shouted, his scaled skin flushed dark purple with anger. Humans have established mining operations in the Vega sector, a region they were specifically forbidden from entering when they were part of the Council. The Dravidi ambassador, ever the voice of calm, raised a slender hand. "May I remind the chamber that humans are no longer bound by Council restrictions? They withdrew their membership, and thus our rules no longer apply to them." "Then perhaps it is time we remind them of the consequences of defying the Council," the Zilarian hissed. "Our combined fleets could—" The chamber door slid open, interrupting the threat. A council aide hurried in and whispered something to the High Counselor. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the front. "It seems," the High Counselor said, slowly, "that we have received a communication from the humans. They wish to send a delegation to discuss boundaries and rules of engagement. They will arrive tomorrow." Murmurs filled the room. Some delegates seemed relieved at the chance for diplomacy. Others, like the Zilarian, looked disappointed that their calls for military action might go unheeded. The next day, Council security forces were on high alert as they waited for the human shuttle to arrive through normal space. Instead, a blue flash of light appeared directly above the landing pad and a human vessel materialized out of nowhere. The security scanners had no time to react. Commander Olivia Wright led the human delegation. She was tall, with short brown hair, and moved with the confidence of someone who had served in the military. 4 other humans followed her, each carrying only small data tablets. The Council had prepared their grandest meeting room, hoping to impress upon the humans the power and majesty of the organization they had abandoned. Wright glanced around, the ornate chamber with a polite but unimpressed expression. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," the High Counselor began. "We are pleased that humanity wishes to return to—" "I need to stop you there," Wright said calmly. "We're not here to discuss rejoining the Council. We're here to establish new boundaries and rules of engagement. Humanity has no interest in returning to a system where we're treated as lesser beings." The High Counselor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, in surprise. "Then why request this meeting?" "To prevent misunderstandings that could lead to conflict," Wright replied. She activated her tablet, and a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared in the center of the room. Areas in blue showed current human territory, at least 3 times larger than what they had controlled as Council members. "In 1 year of independence," Wright explained, "we've established 57 new colonies, 32 mining operations in extreme environments, and 14 solar harvesting arrays that capture energy directly from stars." The Council members stared at the map in stunned silence. Even the most pessimistic among them hadn't imagined such rapid expansion. "We've claimed these regions," Wright continued, highlighting sections of the map in green. "We plan to expand into them over the next 5 years. None of these areas contain worlds with intelligent life, and we will maintain a minimum 10 light-year buffer zone from any Council territories. You cannot simply claim unclaimed space without Council approval," protested the Zilarian ambassador. Wright raised an eyebrow. "We can and we have. We're not asking permission. We're informing you of the new reality to avoid future conflicts." She switched the display to show a different kind of map. trade routes spanning the galaxy. We also wish to establish new trade agreements, Wright said, her tone softening slightly. Despite our political differences, there are resources and goods both sides need. Why would we trade with those who defy council authority? The Zalarian demanded. Because your medical technology is failing, replied one of Wright's team, a man named Paul Mason. Without human technicians and innovation, replacement parts for complex systems are becoming scarce. We've noticed a 20% increase in mortality rates across council space for treatments that require advanced technology. The room fell silent again. The humans had been monitoring council worlds more closely than anyone realized. We're prepared to resume limited technological exchanges, Mason continued. Medical technology, agricultural improvements, basic transportation systems. In exchange, we seek raw materials from council worlds that our new territories don't yet produce in sufficient quantities. The meeting lasted for hours. By the end, no formal agreements had been signed, but both sides agreed to continue discussions. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Patricia Morrison, now promoted to senior diplomatic analyst, approached Commander Wright. I'm curious, Morrison said quietly. Why offer trade at all? You've shown you don't need us. Wright looked at her thoughtfully. Humanity doesn't want enemies, Ms. Morrison. We just want respect and the freedom to reach our potential. If we can have those without conflict, all the better. And if you can't, Morrison asked, then we'll continue on our own path. Wright answered simply. We've accomplished more in 1 year of independence than in 2 centuries under council restrictions. We won't go back to the way things were. After the humans left, the council debated long into the night. Some argued for immediate military action to contain the human expansion. Others insisted on accepting the new reality and focusing on rebuilding relations. In the end, they could only agree on one thing. The galaxy had changed forever. The humans they had patronized for centuries had emerged as a major power almost overnight, with technology that rendered many council advantages obsolete. Small groups of council species began reaching out to human colonies, seeking to establish their own independent relationships outside official channels. Some even requested permission to emigrate to human worlds, attracted by the freedom and opportunity they offered. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone was adjusting to the new reality. Everyone except the oldest council races, who still couldn't accept that their carefully controlled galaxy was slipping from their grasp. As Morrison wrote in her report that night, we treated them like children for too long, never noticing they had grown up. Now the children have left home, built their own house, and it's bigger and better than ours. The question is no longer how to bring them back, but whether they'll let us visit. 3 years after the human schism, as it was now called in council records, the galaxy faced a new threat. The first reports came from the outer rim, from small outposts that suddenly went silent. Council investigators found nothing but barren rock where thriving communities had once existed. Every trace of life had been stripped away. The council initially blamed humans, claiming their rapid expansion had led to resource piracy. But then human colonies started disappearing too. The first clear information about the threat came from an unexpected source. Captain Daniel Rogers, commanding the human exploration vessel Horizon, was mapping systems beyond the known galaxy when his ship encountered something unlike anything seen before. The Horizon emerged from a wormhole near a small mining outpost that had recently gone silent. Instead of finding an abandoned facility, Rogers and his crew witnessed massive organic-looking ships surrounding the planet. The surface below was changing color as they watched, turning from green and blue to a sickly gray. Full sensor sweep, Rogers ordered, his voice steady despite the disturbing scene before them. And prepare for emergency jump if we're detected. The data they collected in those brief moments would prove crucial. The Horizon was spotted by the alien vessels and barely escaped through their wormhole before being caught. 3 of the strange ships followed them through, but the Horizon security team managed to destroy them in the ensuing battle. When the Horizon limped back to human space 2 weeks later, they brought both data and samples from the destroyed enemy ships. Scientists named the new species the Hive based on their biology. Each ship was actually a colony of interconnected organisms sharing a collective consciousness. They existed only to consume and grow, converting all organic matter they encountered into more of themselves. The Council's response to the news was slow and bureaucratic. Species argued over who should commit forces to investigate, what territories should be protected first, and whether the threat was even real. Their defense forces struggled to coordinate across vast distances without humanity's wormhole technology. Meanwhile, human military and scientific teams worked around the clock to understand the enemy and develop effective weapons against them. The United Human Worlds established a defense perimeter and began evacuating their outermost colonies. 6 months after the Horizon's discovery, the Council finally sent an envoy to human space, seeking assistance. Ambassador Laura Wilson received them aboard Nexus Station, the massive hub of humanity's wormhole network. The Council delegation entered the station in awe. The structure was larger than any space station they had ever seen, with separate gravity zones, massive gardens, and a central atrium where thousands of people from dozens of species moved about their business. Not all were human. Many Council citizens had defected to human space in recent years, seeking opportunity or just a change from the rigid Council systems. Wilson met the delegation in a simple meeting room. The stark contrast between the grandeur of the station and the plainness of the room was not lost on the Council representatives. "Thank you for coming," Wilson said, skipping the formal greetings that Council protocol required. "I assume you're here about the Hive." The lead Council representative, a Zilarian named Nith, bristled at the directness but nodded. "The Council requests human assistance in coordinating a response to this threat. Our worlds are suffering, and our fleets cannot cover such vast distances effectively." Wilson activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red markers indicated confirmed Hive activity. There were dozens of them, forming a wave that was sweeping toward the core systems. "We've been tracking them for months," Wilson explained. "Based on their movement patterns and expansion rate, they'll reach the first major Council worlds within a year." She zoomed in on a section of space. "And the Council capital within 18 months. The Council representatives looked at each other in alarm. Their own analysts had suggested a much longer time frame. "How can you be so certain?" Nith asked. Wilson changed the display to show surveillance footage from automated human probes. The images showed Hive ships consuming entire worlds in days, not the months that Council scientists had estimated. "We've had direct engagement with them 7 times now," Wilson said. "They're learning and adapting with each encounter. They're getting faster and more efficient at stripping worlds." She switched to another view of the galaxy, this one showing blue lines connecting various systems. "The human wormhole network. We anticipated something like this," Wilson continued. "Not the Hive specifically, but some kind of external threat. It's why we accelerated our expansion. We needed resources and strategic depth." The revelation stunned the Council representatives. They had assumed humans left the Council because of wounded pride or political frustration. The idea that humans had foreseen a threat the Council had missed was difficult for them to accept. "What do you propose?" asked a Dravidi representative, after a long silence. "Limited cooperation," Wilson replied. "We'll share our defensive technology and provide evacuation corridors for civilian populations in the Hive's path. In return, we need access to Council biological research facilities. Our scientists believe the Hive has a central controlling intelligence that can be targeted." "And military coordination?" Nith asked. Wilson shook her head. "We won't place human forces under Council command. We've seen how Council committees debate while worlds burn. This threat requires decisive action, not consensus building." The meeting ended with a tentative agreement. The Council would provide biological research and data on affected worlds. Humanity would share defensive shield technology and allow refugee ships to use specific wormhole routes for evacuation. As the Council delegation prepared to leave, Patricia Morrison, now the Council's Chief of Intelligence, approached Wilson privately. "You knew this was coming," Morrison said. "That's the real reason humans left the Council, isn't it? You saw something we missed." Wilson looked at her for a long moment. "Not precisely this threat, but we recognized patterns your analysts ignored. Throughout history, isolated civilizations often collapsed when they encountered outside forces. The Council created a bubble of safety and convinced itself the bubble was the entire universe. While humans kept looking outward, Morrison finished the thought. Wilson nodded. We tried to warn the Council for decades. Your leaders dismissed our concerns as human paranoia or aggression. In the end, leaving was our only option to prepare properly. Morrison looked around the station, at the efficient activity and purposeful energy. I wonder if the Council can adapt quickly enough. For everyone's sake, I hope so, Wilson replied. Because the Hive is just the beginning. The galaxy is larger and more dangerous than the Council ever wanted to believe. As Morrison returned to her group, she understood that humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy by leaving the Council. They had been trying to save it all along. 5 years after first contact with the Hive, the galaxy had transformed. A third of former Council space had been lost, its worlds consumed by the relentless enemy. The once proud Council races had been forced to abandon their capital and retreat toward human territory. The combined human fleet, now the largest military force in known space, formed a defensive line at the Arcturus Nexus, a massive wormhole junction that served as the gateway to the core human systems. Hundreds of ships patrolled the area, their hulls gleaming in the light of the nearby sun. Fleet Admiral John Bennett stood on the bridge of the command carrier Defiance, watching tactical displays as reports came in from all sectors. The gray-haired Admiral had seen more action in the past 5 years than in his entire previous career. Status report, he ordered. Hive forces have entered the Proxima system, reported his second-in-command. Evacuations are 98% complete. Our rear guard will withdraw through the wormhole in 30 minutes. Bennett nodded grimly. Another system lost, but the people were safe. That was the pattern of the war, strategic withdrawals while saving as many lives as possible. Humans had not developed their wormhole network just for exploration and commerce. From the beginning, they had designed it to be a lifeline in case of disaster. In the engineering section of the Defiance, Samantha Powell worked alongside a team of mixed species. The human engineer directed a Zalarian technician and 2 Dravidi specialists as they integrated a new weapon system. Careful with that connection, Powell warned. The power curve is steeper than anything you've worked with before. The Zalarian, named Vex, adjusted his approach. 5 years ago, he had been among those calling for military action against humans. Now he worked side by side with them, learning their technology and methods. How many ships will have this system before the Hive reaches us? Vex asked. If we work around the clock? Maybe 60% of the fleet. Powell replied honestly. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out. Species that had once viewed each other with suspicion now worked together against a common enemy. Humans shared technology freely, while Council species contributed their own unique capabilities. Dravidi psychic barriers, Solarian gravitational weapons, now freed from restrictions that had limited their development. On a different deck, Patricia Morrison met with Admiral Bennett and ambassadors from the remaining Council worlds. Morrison had abandoned her Council position 2 years ago to help coordinate the joint war effort. The latest projections confirm our worst fears, she said, pointing to a holographic map. The Hive will reach Arcturus within 3 days. We've detected at least 3,000 ships in their vanguard. Against our 800, added the Dravidi ambassador soberly. Bennett studied the display. Numbers aren't everything. The Hive still doesn't understand how our wormhole network operates. That gives us a tactical advantage. He pointed to different sections of the map. Their forces are spread across these approach vectors. We'll use our mobility to isolate and destroy them in smaller groups. And if that fails? Asked a Council representative. Then we fall back to Sewell and make our stand there, Bennett replied. Earth has been preparing defenses since we first discovered the Hive. As the meeting ended, Morrison found herself standing beside Ambassador William Carter. The man who had led humanity's departure from the Council 5 years ago now looked older, with lines of worry etched into his face. He had come out of retirement to advise the war effort. Did you ever imagine it would come to this? Morrison asked him quietly. Carter gave her a tired smile. Not exactly this, no. But we knew something would come from beyond Council space eventually. The universe is too vast for it to be otherwise. I used to think humans were paranoid, Morrison admitted. Always preparing for the worst. We prefer to call it pragmatic, Carter replied. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It's kept our species alive through countless disasters. The battle at Arcturus Nexus began 2 days later, earlier than expected. Hive ships surged toward the wormhole junction in waves, sacrificing thousands of vessels to overwhelm human defenses. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Bennett watched as the first line of defense engaged the enemy. Human ships jumped instantly between different points in the battlefield, striking and withdrawing before the Hive could respond. Nexus Control reports Sector 8 is overrun, a communications officer called out. Captain Frank Mitchell requests permission to activate Protocol Sunburst. Bennett hesitated only briefly. Permission granted. All ships clear Sector 8 immediately. Minutes later, a blinding flash erupted from the sector as human ships detonated special charges inside the wormhole apertures. The unstable energy collapsed on the Hive fleet, destroying hundreds of enemy vessels in seconds. But the Hive kept coming. For every ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. After 18 hours of continuous battle, the human lines began to falter. Admiral, Powell called from her engineering station. I'm getting unusual readings from the Hive command ship. The energy signature has changed. Bennett moved to her console. Magnify. The screen showed the massive Hive vessel, easily 10 times larger than any other ship in their fleet. But something was happening to it. Sections were breaking apart, weapons falling silent. What's going on? Bennett demanded. The biological weapon, Powell said, her voice rising with excitement. It's working. 3 months earlier, scientists from 5 different species had created a virus that targeted the Hive's central controlling intelligence. Special forces had deployed it in a suicide mission, but there had been no sign it was effective until now. All ships focus fire on any Hive vessel showing signs of disintegration, Bennett ordered. They're vulnerable. The tide of battle turned within hours. Without central coordination, the Hive ships fell into disarray. Some continued fighting, but others drifted aimlessly or turned on each other. 3 days later, Admiral Bennett stood in the observation lounge of the Defiance, watching as recovery teams moved among the wreckage. Beside him stood representatives from a dozen species, both former council members and those who had joined with humanity. We did it, said Vex, the Zalarian engineer. Together, Bennett nodded. This battle, yes, but the war isn't over. There will be more Hive out there, and perhaps other threats we haven't encountered yet. Then we'll face them together as well, said Morrison. Not as Council and humans, but as allies. 1 month later, representatives from all surviving species gathered on Earth. They stood not in a council chamber, but in an open field under the sky. Carter, now appointed as Earth's chief diplomat, addressed them. The old council failed because it was built on fear. Fear of what we might become if we reached our full potential. What rises in its place must be built on mutual respect, and the understanding that diversity of thought and approach isn't a weakness to be controlled, but our greatest strength. The new Galactic Alliance was formed not as a governing body, but as a cooperative network of independent species. At its heart stood humanity, not as rulers, but as the bridges between worlds. The galaxy no longer trembled in fear of human potential unleashed, but in anticipation of what might be accomplished together.